Good evening, friends. Mad Matt Wonka here with another episode of Mad Matt's RPG Discussion. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Doctor Who RPG. I just got myself the book a week or two ago. I've been reading through it, and I find it really, really amazing. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. First, I really love how flexible of an RPG system it is. If you want to have a bunch of characters who are really good at combat, you can have a lot of good combat. If you want to be more about puzzles, you can do it about puzzles. You can have all these different characters, and they work well. And, you know, it's based on the Doctor Who TV show. And so you end up with having a bunch of different people in the TARDIS who are good at different things. And that just makes it work really, really well. One of the cool things about it is how vague a lot of the things are. There's not a lot of numbers. D&D is a lot about numbers. You have hit points, you have initiative, you have all these different attributes, and they all come up with attack rolls and damage rolls, and there's all of this stuff involved in it. And so a lot of the feats and a lot of the class features that you get are all about changing those numbers around. But they don't have that here in this. It's all entirely character dependent. Is your character pretty strong? Yeah, then you bump his strength up. If he, good at this one area, then you get a skill in that. And your character can be good at fighting, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he has to be using his one sword. That's one of the big things that caught me up in 4th edition once, where I was playing with a fairly new group of people, and all our weapons were taken away. Which meant that our numbers were supposed to be way different than what they were on our character sheets, but no one was really thinking about that. It was just one of the things that D&D does that makes it a little bit weird. It assumes that you're always in like this optimum stance. You always have your armor on, you always have your weapon with you, you're always set up to go, but this isn't quite like that, and it's not as number dependent as D&D. For example, the second huge difference, is that there's no hit point system. I've seen some RPGs that haven't had one, but this one does it really, really cool. It's got a series of attributes, things like resolve, coordination, strength, and what these are, these are like your strength, charisma, will, those type of things, but they're a lot less vague of a number. You know what charisma is. It's just how well you interact with people. But that's just because we know that's how we've had to explain it to people. In this, it's called presence, and it's a lot about how you carry yourself. And if you, as combat and stuff goes on, you can take damage to your attributes. And once they get down to 0, you're out of it. But as you can, you can see it. Like, you can see a person who has a resolve stat, and as that resolve stat keeps getting damaged, he starts losing his resolve. He doesn't want to keep trying. He doesn't want to go on. He doesn't want to resist. He just is ready to give up. Or when they start losing coordination, they become more and more clumsy. Or when their strength is giving out, they don't have the strength to keep going. And it's a really interesting system and allows a lot of flexible things where your damage from combat can go into the role-playing aspects of a skill challenge. Because in D&D, I've never had it happen where you were, because you were bloodied in combat, you're not able to climb up a wall. It makes sense that that should be how it could happen, but I've never seen it done, and that's a really fascinating thing. Third major difference, the basic mechanic of the game is different than the standard Roll20 system that we're used to. In the D20 system, you roll a D20, you add some numbers to it, and you see if it hits a difficulty. And if it hits that difficulty, you succeed, and if it doesn't, you fail. And that's the basic mechanic. In the Doctor Who RPG system, the basic mechanic is a lot more complicated, but it's a lot more interesting. There is still the same target number. Say it's that you're trying to get to 20. What you do is you add 2 of your attributes, or maybe an attribute and a skill that you can be using to try and complete a challenge. You add those 2 together, roll some dice, and if it's above that number, then you succeed, and if it's below that number, then you, fail. However, depending on how much you succeed and how much you fail determines how bad it is. If it's just like a close miss, then even though you succeeded, bad stuff can still happen. Or if it was just barely a fail, it might, you might not have been able to dodge the bullet, but it was only a grazing flesh wound. It's not as bad as it could have been. On the flip side, if you get like 9 more or fail by 9 or more, it's a fantastic success or like a dismal failure. I don't remember which word they use. And, you know, your damage that you would be dealing, there's no rolling for damage in this. It's all static damage. And if you get a fantastic success, the best success you can get, your damage is doubled, I believe. And if you get a like just barely success, it's halved. And there's a charts that are laid out for it, and it's really, really interesting because you can succeed and bad things can happen, and you can fail and good things can happen, and that makes it really interesting. However, when you do fail, there is this other really interesting mechanic. 4 is what I believe we're on, and now we're talking about story points. Story points are these little tokeny things that everybody gets, and they can be used in a lot of different ways. And one of the big ways that you could do it is you can turn a success, or you can turn a failure into the next level up. And so if you fail dismally, you can spend a story point to make it so you fail mediocrely, and spend another point to make it so you fail just barely, and another point. So if you get a dismal failure, you can spend 4 story points and get it so you succeeded barely. And that's a really interesting thing. There's a lot of other really cool things you can do with these story points. They allow you to do the type of things that you see on the TV show, where somebody makes a startling discovery or manages to get really, really lucky with how things go. It's plot armor put into a game mechanic, and that's really, really cool. The 5th big change about the Doctor Who RPG compared to the D&D RPG is combat. The Doctor Who RPG doesn't believe in combat a lot. They believe that all situations, you know, can be solved by talking, and if you can't talk, well, you should probably be running. There's, you know, D&D, you end up like fighting a monster and you slog it out until it's done. But that's not how it happens in this RPG. They want you to talk to people. They want you to try doing all these different things. They want violence to be the last resort. And it's a really, really interesting philosophy behind it. As part of this philosophy, the combat, if you can call it that, is really weird. Instead of having an initiative roll, another number that they got rid of, what they do is everybody at the start of a round states their intent. The DM says the Cybermen are going to point their guns at you and fire and delete you, and everyone says, and everyone else has a chance to say, I'm going to go run over there, or I'm going to try talking to them to get them to stop, or I'm going to fiddle with my gadget to make a force field. And then the round begins, and the round is broken up not by, you know, that initiative order, but by what action you're trying to do. People who talk get to go first, and so all the verbal parts of the what would you call it, the social encounter gets to happen first in that round, and they get to try and talk the Cybermen down. And then the next action are the movers, the people who want to dodge behind cover. They get to do so at that time. The next is the doers, the person who's doing the fiddling. And then finally, at the end, when everything could possibly be resolved already, are the people who want to fight. And inside of these, there's inside of each of those little bits of the round, it determines by by different attributes about who would go first. But that's a really, really interesting way to do it, to break down everything and have the entire round that of everybody acting at once start with everybody saying, this is what we're going to do. And I think that's a really cool way of doing it. I personally haven't had the opportunity to play a session yet. I believe I'm going to monopolize a one-off week of our D&D group and play it there after I've talked to them a little bit more about it, and you know, come up with some characters. I did. Oh, where did my paper go? Paper. I don't know where it went. I did manage to turn my friend's character, like our he's almost like the team, the group mascot, just Tanith the Minotaur. I managed to make his character in the Doctor Who RPG, and it's a really interesting character because he's spec'd for combat, and you can see, like, there's provisions made in the RPG for characters who like combat. The weapon systems, he's got like his glaive that he has is a +4 weapon, which means it deals 4 extra damage up to his strength because it's heavy and it's sharp, and that's all it took to figure out what his glaive stats were. It's like the exact same stats a claymore would be. It's, you know, deals more damage than a dagger because it's heavy, and it's not innately dangerous like a chainsaw, and so it doesn't get an additional 2 from that. But that's how easy it was to convert his weaponry over. And then I just kind of plugged points around and went through all the traits and the skills to see what felt like Tanith, and, you know, put some in there. There's a, you know, I'm not quite sure. I might need to buy some more supplements to see if they have like a magic supplement. They probably don't, because it is supposed to be a sci-fi RPG. So I might have to make some extra traits to just allow people to do magic. I think it's a fascinating system, and it's really easy to expand, because you're like, oh, magic traits, here you go, drop, and then people are able to do a little bit of magic spells. And I think that's all you would need to do it. And there's really nothing to balance, because it's mostly about telling a story instead about running numbers. And that's one of the things that I really like about D&D 5th edition, or D&D Next, is that it was less about all of the different numbers and more about telling the story. And I like that a lot, and I think this goes in a similar vein. And I'm really excited, and I really hope I can get the chance to play it. And when I do play it, I really hope I get the chance to record it and get it up here on the channel for you guys to watch. If you have any questions for me, I would love to answer them. Please leave me stuff down below, and if I've got enough, you know, to make another video, enough questions to make another video, I shall. But other than that, my name is MadMatt Wankow. This has been MadMatt's RPG, talking about the new, what's it called? The Doctor Who, I think it's called Adventures in Time and Space. There's no actual title, it's just the Games Master's Guide. But I think it's The Adventures in Time and Space. It's a worthy buy. It's a bit pricey. It's like $60 for the kit, but it is a kit. It's not just one book. It comes with dice, comes with character sheets from the show. A lot of cool stuff. Check it out. You guys stay online. I'll see you next time. Peace out.